Are Riot desperately trying to change the Initiator meta? Well, looking at the upcoming changes, it certainly would seem that way. Earlier today, we got to see the changes that will be coming to Valorant very soon in patch 7.12, and these changes directly target Gekko and Skye, who are the most played and least played initiators in the game. So definitely they're looking to sort of change up the Initiator meta that's been mostly stale for the better part of this year. First, taking a look at Gekko, his Dizzy, Trash, and Wingman reclaim time has been decreased from 2 seconds to 1 second. So that is completely in half, 2 to 1. And that's pretty significant because now Gekko will be a lot less vulnerable when he's trying to pick up his abilities and enemies are trying to peek and kill him while he's doing it. It definitely felt like a lot of times I was able to get kills on Geckos who were trying to pick up their abilities, especially because most of the time they do it in really dumb spots, like they're just gonna try and pick it up in the open expecting no one to peek it. But for the players who do have, you know, some common sense, this definitely will help them out a lot. Also with Gekko, Dizzy will now shoot and see enemies faster, with a targeting time being reduced from 0.5 to 3.5 seconds and shooting speed increased 35%. Now that is pretty significant because we all know the most annoying part of Gekko was definitely his flash. Man, I have horrible flashbacks to the first month Gekko was in ranked. I kept thinking it was a normal flash, so I kept turning my head every time I saw one, but eventually I learned that yeah, you have to shoot it. But it was such a hard learning curve because I've just been playing against flashes that you turn your head against all the time for like so many years now that it just felt really weird to have to shoot them. And of course Reyna's flash you also have to shoot, but like come on, that's totally different, right? So his flashes are just generally going to be better now. One of the weaknesses of Gekko before was that his flashes tended to be inconsistent. Once people learned to shoot them, people were always shooting them out. It didn't feel like you were really getting much value out of them. Sometimes, of course, you could use them for information if you throw them at the right spots. If they target enemies, you know they're there. If it gets shot out, you know they're there, right? So it could have been used for information. But if you're actually trying to flash people to peek and get kills, then it definitely felt pretty lackluster. So with the targeting time reduced and the shooting speed increased, this flash might be pretty disgusting in the ranked environment, and I do not look forward to playing against Geckos in the upcoming patch. So definitely do not sleep on these nerfs. I don't think they necessarily put him into like the S tier of characters, but I think he definitely does become a lot more viable and will have much more consistent value with just these few changes. Now looking over to Skye, oh no man, I did not want to see more Skye nerfs this year. Riot has definitely hit Skye with a couple of nerfs this year already because she has been the most dominant initiator for the year, and it's no different today. Trailblazer camera movement is now disabled while jumping, so you know it's pretty often you see Skye players when they're moving around with their dog and they jump, they'll swing their mouse from side to side so that they can see both sides of a corner. Well, now you can't do that. If you jump, you can't move your camera around. Also, if Trailblazer is destroyed mid-jump, it will no longer cause a concuss explosion. Alright, this one, even though I'm a Skye player, I agree with this one. It felt so BS when you shoot out a dog and it still concussed you because it was already in the air. That felt so terrible as the player playing against Skye, and I have died way too many times because of that. So this one I can definitely agree with. And then concuss explosion will now affect allies and enemies, and I'm like, no, I'm slapping my forehead at this one because please Riot, the last thing I need is me fighting my teammates and the enemy at the same time, because a lot of the people in my ranked games, they do not know how to control that dog well, and this is just going to make my life a lot worse. So for me personally, I really don't get why they're nerfing Skye. I know she's definitely been the most meta dominant initiator. Is she the most meta initiator because she's the strongest, or is it because there are other factors in play? I would definitely argue the latter. If you look at the meta this year, what has been most dominant? It has been double controller meta on maps like Bind, Split, Lotus, even some Haven, Pearl. Definitely, we always saw the double controller. It was always Viper and Harbor in pro play, and a lot of Viper and Omen also in pro play, and Viper Brimstone of course on maps like Bind. So that has been dominating the meta this year, the double controller. So what that does to your team comp is that now you can only play one Initiator, when previously before double Initiator was most dominant. So if you're gonna have one Initiator on your team, of course you'd want it to be Skye, because Skye does a little bit of everything. She can flash, she can gain information, and she does both pretty well. Sova and Fade are more about the information, and of course somebody like KO and Breach, they're all about the flashes, right? So Skye does a little bit of both, and since you can only now exclusively have one on your team, if your team is running that double controller meta like everybody else, then of course you'd want a Skye on your team. So that doesn't necessarily mean Skye is overpowered, in my opinion. She just is the best fit for these compositions that are running double smokes. So does she deserve nerfs? Absolutely not, in my opinion. I thought she was in a pretty good place, and Skye is definitely one of the more skillful characters in the game. So I really just hate when they try to tone down and nerf the more skillful characters in the game, especially with the Trailblazer movement right there. Like, that one definitely does bother me. And of course we got to see some pros on Twitter already reacting to the changes. We had Shazam saying, "Awesome, now my wonderful ranked teammates can team flash and stun me." And I agree with that sentiment, because I definitely feel like I am going to be suffering from that pretty soon. And of course we had Ethan saying, "Another way to shorten the skill gap. Skye players with good dog movement were able to get so much out of it." And I 100% agree. Players who aren't very experienced and play Skye, you can definitely tell the difference with their dog movement compared to those who are very experienced. The way experienced players were able to really get as much information out of the dog was pretty cool. And you might say, oh, it wasn't that much, but it could mean the difference between life and death if you just see the hint of someone's arm or leg around the corner because you had better movement with the dog. So it definitely does reduce the skill gap in Skye. So I'm completely with Ethan here, and I am not a big fan of the change. But those were the changes coming up for 7.12, guys. What do you think about them? Do you agree with them? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Do you agree with Riot that Skye needs a nerf? I don't. Or do you agree with me that, like I said, she doesn't? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll be reading and responding to them, and I'll see you in the next one.